The old ship moved slowly through space toward the massive station ahead. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his worn command chair, watching the giant structure grow larger on the main screen. Kepler Station was huge, bigger than any human-built station he had ever seen. Ships from dozens of alien races moved around it like busy insects. "Captain, we're getting docking instructions," said Communications Officer Beth Turner. She looked up from her console with a frown. "They're assigning us berth 847. That's way down in the lower sections." Jake nodded. He had expected this. The station controllers probably took one look at their ship and decided it belonged with the garbage haulers and mining vessels, the UHS. Heritage was old, no doubt about that. Her hull was dark metal, scratched and worn from 1,000 years in space. She didn't have the shiny curves of modern ships or the fancy lights that seemed popular with alien designs. "Take us in slow and steady," Jake told his pilot. "No need to rush." Through the viewports they could see other ships docking. Sleek Zephyrian cruisers slid into the best berths with their silver hulls gleaming. Massive Vorthon ships that looked like floating crystals took up the premium spots near the station's core. Even the smaller vessels from races Jake didn't recognize looked newer and more advanced than the Heritage. Commander Lisa Brady stood at the tactical station, her eyes moving between the various displays. "Captain, I'm picking up communications. Chatter. The aliens are talking about us." "What are they saying?" Lisa's mouth turned down slightly. "Nothing good. The Zephyrians are laughing. They're calling us the metal scrap heap and wondering how we even made it this far. The Krillians are making clicking sounds that their translator says means amusing and pathetic." Jake wasn't surprised. First impressions mattered, and the Heritage didn't make a good one. She was functional, not pretty. Her designers had cared more about making her work than making her look good. "Captain," Chief Engineer Danny Sullivan's voice came over the comm from the engine room. "I'm getting interference from those fancy ships out there. Their engines are putting out some kind of signal that's messing with our docking sensors." "Interference or deliberate jamming?" Jake asked. "Hard to tell, sir. Could be they just don't care if their exhaust scrambles our systems." Through the main viewer, Jake could see a beautiful Zephyrian ship moving away from a docking port they had been heading toward. The reptilian captain probably saw the Heritage approaching and decided to take up more space, just because he could. "Find us another berth, Danny. We don't need the best spot." "Already on it, Captain. There's an open dock down near the waste processing level." The Heritage slowly moved toward the lower sections of the station. Here, the docking bays were smaller and less maintained. The lighting was dimmer, and Jake could see stains on the station walls that suggested this area didn't get much attention from the cleaning crews. As they docked, Jake watched several alien crew members through a nearby viewport. They were pointing at the Heritage and making gestures that didn't need translation. A group of tall, blue-skinned Nexari were shaking their heads and speaking rapidly. One of them held up a small device that was probably recording the Heritage's arrival for some kind of report. "Docking complete," announced the pilot. "All systems show green." "Good work, everyone." Jake stood up from his chair. "Lisa, you're with me. We need to go check in with station security and get our diplomatic credentials processed." "Yes, sir." As they walked through the Heritage's corridors toward the airlock, Jake noticed how different his ship felt compared to what he had seen of the alien vessels. Their walls were clean metal, worn smooth by centuries of use but still solid. The lights were bright and steady. Everything worked exactly as it was supposed to work. The airlock opened onto a station corridor that was clearly designed for the lower-class docks. The walls were a dull gray and the air had a slight chemical smell. Alien crew members from various ships moved past them, carrying supplies or heading to their own vessels. Most of them stared at Jake and Lisa as they passed. "Look at their clothes," one alien whispered to another in a language the universal translators handled easily. "So primitive. And did you see their ship? I'm surprised it still flies." Lisa's jaw tightened, but Jake kept his expression neutral. They had a job to do here, and getting angry at ignorant comments wouldn't help. They found the security office after asking for directions twice. The desk officer was a Krillian, one of the insect-like species that made up a large part of the Galactic Council's military forces. His compound eyes looked them up and down as they approached. Species? The officer clicked. Human, Jake replied. Captain Jake Morrison of the UHS Heritage. We're here for first contact protocols and trade discussions. The Krillion's mandibles moved in what might have been amusement. Human. Yes, we received word you were coming. Your ship is registered as a military vessel? That's correct. Military. The officer made more clicking sounds and typed something into his console. Your ship appears to be quite old. Are you certain it is still combat-worthy? The Heritage serves our needs, Jake said calmly. I see. The Krillian handed them identification cards. You are cleared for general station access. Please be aware that many areas require higher security clearance, which will need to be approved by the Galactic Council representative. As they left the security office, Lisa spoke quietly. They think we're a joke, Captain. I know. The way they looked at us at our ship, like we're some kind of museum exhibit. Jake stopped walking and turned to face her. Lisa, what do you see when you look at the Heritage? She thought for a moment. I see home. I see a ship that's carried us safely across half the galaxy. I see systems that work and a crew that knows how to use them. And what do they see? Old metal, outdated technology, something that should have been scrapped centuries ago. Exactly. Jake smiled slightly. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Let them underestimate us. It might be useful. They continued through the station corridors, passing shops and restaurants designed for dozens of different alien species. The architecture was impressive, with soaring ceilings and decorative elements that showed real artistic skill. But Jake noticed that everything looked new, shiny, and delicate. Beautiful, but not built to last. Captain Morrison? A new voice spoke behind them. They turned to see a tall, elegant alien approaching. This was clearly a Nexari, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. His clothing was elaborate, with flowing robes that seemed to shift color as he moved. I am Zexthul, representative of the Nexari Union and current chair of the Galactic Council's First Contact Committee. I was hoping we might arrange a meeting to discuss your species' intentions in this sector. Of course, Jake replied. We're here to establish peaceful relations and explore trade opportunities. Zexthul's expression was polite but dismissive. Excellent, I confess we are quite curious about your vessel. Our intelligence reports suggested that human ships might pose some kind of threat, but after seeing your Heritage, I believe there may have been some error in our information gathering. What kind of error? Well, clearly, your ship represents your current technological capabilities, and frankly, we are not particularly concerned about any military threat from vessels of that age and design. Zexthul's tone was kind but condescending, like an adult explaining something to a child. Perhaps we could arrange a tour. My military advisors would be very interested in seeing how humans approach starship construction. Jake felt Lisa tense beside him, but he kept his voice steady. We would be happy to show you around the Heritage. Wonderful. Shall we say tomorrow at noon, station time? I will bring along some experts who can help us understand your technology better. That sounds fine. As Zexthul walked away, his robes flowing dramatically behind him, Lisa whispered, He wants to see how primitive we are. Yes, Jake agreed. This should be interesting. The next day, Jake Morrison stood at the Heritage's main airlock waiting for his guests. He had spent the morning making sure his crew was ready. Everyone knew this inspection was important, even if the aliens thought they were just looking at an old piece of junk. The airlock opened and Zexthul entered first, his flowing robes making him look important and official. Behind him came 3 other aliens that Jake recognized from the intelligence briefings. General Crix was a Zephyrian, tall and covered in green scales that caught the light. His yellow eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail. The third, Visitor, was harder to look at directly. Hivemind Unit 7 represented the Krillian Collective, its insect body clicking and buzzing as it moved. Captain Morrison, Zexthul said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for agreeing to this tour. We are all very curious about human engineering. Welcome aboard the Heritage, Jake replied. This is Chief Security Officer Ryan. Clark, he'll be helping with a tour today. Ryan nodded to the aliens. He was a big man with steady eyes and calm movements. Jake had chosen him carefully for this meeting. Ryan looked like exactly what he was. Someone you didn't want to fight. General. Crix looked around the airlock with obvious disappointment. This is your main entry? It seems quite basic. It works, Ryan said simply. They moved into the main corridor. The aliens walked slowly, examining everything. Jake watched their faces as they took in the worn metal walls, the simple lighting, and the basic control panels. Zexthul made notes on a small device. General Crix touched the wall and seemed surprised by how solid it felt. How old did you say this ship was? The Zephyrian asked. Just over 1,000 years, Jake answered. Impossible, Hivemind Unit 7 buzzed. No ship functions that long without major reconstruction. The heritage has never been rebuilt, Ryan said. Regular maintenance, of course, but the basic structure is original. The aliens exchanged looks. Jake could see they didn't believe it. They continued the tour, moving through the crew quarters. The rooms were small but comfortable, with everything a person needed for long space travel. The aliens seemed puzzled by how efficiently the space was used. Your crew lives in these rooms for months at a time? Zexthul asked. Sometimes years, Jake said. We were out for 18 months on our last patrol. 18 months? General Kree's scales shifted color slightly. Without resupply? That's correct. They moved on to the ship's recreational areas. The aliens looked at the simple exercise equipment, the small library, and the basic food preparation areas. Everything was built to last, with no decorative elements that might break or need replacement. This is very different from our ships, Zexthul observed. We focus more on comfort and aesthetics. We focus on function, Ryan replied. Chief Engineer Patricia Wells joined them as they headed toward the engine sections. She was a small woman with grease under her fingernails and an easy smile. The aliens barely glanced at her, probably thinking she was just another crew member. Patricia runs our engineering department, Jake said. She can explain how our systems work. I would be very interested to hear about your power generation, General Crix said. Our sensors detected some unusual readings when you docked. Patricia led them to a viewing window that looked into the main engineering space. The aliens pressed close to the glass, studying the machinery inside. What they saw clearly confused them. These power readings, Zexthul said, checking his device. They don't match what we're observing. Your reactors appear to be running at impossible efficiency levels. Not impossible, Patricia said. Just well designed. But the energy output we're detecting would require reactors 3 times this size. Hivemind Unit 7 buzzed rapidly. Our calculations show this is not possible with fusion technology. Patricia shrugged. Works fine for us? She opened a panel to show them some of the internal systems. The aliens leaned in, their expressions growing more puzzled. The components were clearly old, but they showed no signs of wear. Everything looked like it had been built yesterday. How often do you replace these parts? General Crix asked. Replace them? Patricia looked confused. Why would we replace them? They still work. But surely after 1,000 years, some components must fail. Not really. We built them right the first time. They moved on to the navigation center, where Navigation Officer Steve Parker was working at his station. Charts covered his screens, showing star positions and jump routes across this sector of the galaxy. May I see your navigation data? Zexthul asked politely. Steve looked at Jake, who nodded. Sure. Here's our route from Earth to this station. The aliens studied the display and their confusion grew deeper. The route showed jumps through areas of space that all their maps marked as dangerous or impossible to traverse. You traveled through the burning nebula. General Crix's voice was higher than before. That region is filled with radiation storms. No ship can survive passage through that area. We've been through there dozens of times, Steve said. It's actually a nice shortcut if you know the safe channels. Safe channels? Hivemind Unit 7's buzzing became more agitated. Our best ships cannot survive in that environment. The radiation levels would destroy our electronics within hours. Different ships, different capabilities, Steve said with a shrug. Zexthul was making rapid notes on his device. What about the gravity wells of Keth? Your route shows passage directly through them. Those are tricky, Steve admitted. You have to time it right with the tidal cycles, but the Heritage handles gravity wells pretty well. The aliens were starting to look worried. Jake could see them whispering to each other in their own languages when they thought the humans weren't listening. They continued to the ship's medical bay, where Medical Officer Carl White was running routine diagnostics on his equipment. The aliens looked at the medical scanners and treatment devices with growing amazement. This equipment, Zexthul said slowly. It appears to be more advanced than what we use in our finest hospitals. It's standard issue for long-range missions, Carl replied. We have to be ready for anything out here. But how can 1,000-year-old medical technology be more advanced than our current systems? Carl looked puzzled by the question. Why wouldn't it be? We knew we'd be in space for years at a time. We built the best equipment we could. In the ship's fabrication center, they watched Chief Technician Greg Adams creating replacement parts for various systems. The fabricator was making components with precision that amazed the alien observers. You can manufacture any part you need? General Crix asked. Pretty much, Greg said. As long as we have raw materials, we can make whatever the ship needs. This level of manufacturing capability, Hive Mind Unit 7 buzzed, it would require massive industrial facilities on our ships. Not really. This fabricator isn't that big. We just designed it well. By now, the aliens were clearly disturbed. They kept checking their instruments and comparing readings. Whatever they were seeing didn't match their expectations. Captain Morrison, Zexthul said carefully, I must ask directly, is this ship truly representative of human technology from 1,000 years ago? The Heritage was built in 2127, Jake confirmed. She's exactly what our shipyards were producing at that time. And your current ships? Your modern vessels? Jake thought about how to answer that. We've made some improvements over the years, but the Heritage still serves our needs for missions, like this one. What kind of improvements? General Crix demanded. Nothing too dramatic. Better efficiency, some new systems. The basic design principles haven't changed much. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that Jake was beginning to recognize as fear. They were starting to understand that their assumptions about human technology might be completely wrong. I think, Zexthul said slowly, we may need to revise our intelligence reports about human capabilities. Why would you need to do that? Jake asked innocently. Because, the Nexari representative said, his voice barely above a whisper, if this ship represents your technology from 1,000 years ago, and it exceeds our current capabilities in several areas, then we have seriously underestimated your species. Jake just smiled. Would you like to see the weapon systems? The question about weapon systems hung in the air like a threat. General Crix's scales had turned a darker shade of green, and Hive Mind Unit 7's buzzing had become rapid and agitated. Zexthul looked like he was having trouble breathing. Perhaps, the Nexari said carefully, we should see your engine room first to better understand your power systems. Jake nodded to Patricia Wells. Chief, would you show our guests the main engineering section? Be happy to, Patricia said with a smile that didn't quite hide her amusement. She led them deeper into the ship, through corridors that seemed to stretch further than the aliens had expected. The Heritage was bigger inside than it looked from the outside, with levels and sections that had surprised them during the tour. How many crew members do you carry? Zexthul asked as they walked. 43 on this mission, Jake replied. 43? General Crix stopped walking. Our ships of similar size require crews of at least 200. Different designs, Jake said simply. They reached the main engineering section, and Patricia opened the heavy doors. The aliens stepped inside and immediately fell silent. The room was huge, much larger than anything they had expected to find in a ship this size. Massive fusion reactors hummed quietly, their surfaces smooth and unmarked, despite their age. These reactors, Hive Mind Unit 7 said, its buzzing now barely audible. They are operating at 97% efficiency. 98.2 actually, Patricia corrected, checking a display. We're running a little hot today. Impossible, General Crix whispered. Our best reactors achieve 70% efficiency on a good day, and these are 1,000 years old. Give or take a few decades, Patricia said. They were built to last. Zexthul was scanning the reactors with his instruments, his expression growing more disturbed with each reading. The materials used in these reactors, they don't exist in our databases. What are they made of? Standard hull-grade composite, Patricia replied. Same stuff we use for the ship's armor. This composite withstands temperatures and pressures that would destroy our finest materials, the Nexari said, his voice shaking slightly. Patricia shrugged. We knew we'd be in space for a long time. We built things tough. They moved deeper into engineering, where technician Greg Adams was performing routine maintenance on one of the backup systems. He looked up as they approached, wiping his hands. On a cloth. How's she running today, Greg? Patricia asked. Smooth as always, Greg replied. Replaced a coupling in System 7, but it was just routine wear. How often do you perform major maintenance? General Crix asked. Major maintenance? Greg looked confused. What do you mean? Complete system overhauls, reactor replacements, structural repairs. We don't do that, Greg said. Never had to. Everything still works like new. The aliens exchanged glances that were becoming increasingly frightened. Their ships required major overhauls every few years just to keep running. The idea of a vessel operating for 1,000 years without major repairs was impossible to them. May I ask? Zexthul said slowly. What is the expected operational lifetime of this vessel? The Heritage? Patricia thought about it. She's rated for a continuous operation for at least another 2,000 years. Maybe more if we're careful with her. Hive Mind Unit 7 made a sound like static electricity. 2,000 more years? This ship could operate for 3,000 years total. That's the minimum specification, Patricia said. Our engineers tend to be conservative with their estimates. They left the engineering section and moved toward the ship's communication center, where communications officer Beth Turner was monitoring dozens of channels simultaneously. The aliens watched as she maintained contact with human ships and colonies across vast distances. How many human vessels are in this sector? Zexthul asked. In this sector? Beth checked her displays. About 40 ships last count, plus the colonies on New Boston and Riverside. 40 ships? General Crix's voice cracked slightly. We were told humans had perhaps a dozen vessels capable of interstellar travel. Dozen? Beth laughed. We've got over 3,000 ships in active service, that's not counting the reserve fleet or the colony defense vessels. The aliens stood in stunned silence. Their intelligence had been completely wrong. Not only were humans more numerous than expected, but their technology was far more advanced. These other ships, Hive Mind Unit 7 buzzed weakly. Are they similar to this one? The Heritage is pretty standard for a patrol vessel, Beth said. Some of the newer ships are bigger, some are faster. Depends on their mission. Newer ships, Zexthul repeated. Ships built with more advanced technology than this one. Well, yeah. Technology keeps improving. The ships we're building now are quite a bit more capable than the Heritage. Jake watched. The aliens absorbed this information. He could see the fear growing in their eyes as they realized the implications. If the Heritage was just a routine patrol vessel, what were the newer human ships capable of? They moved to the ship's defensive systems, where weapons specialist Karen Mitchell was running diagnostics on the shield generators. The aliens watched, the displays showing the ship's defensive capabilities. Your shields, General Crix said, studying the readouts. They show power levels that should be impossible for a ship this size. They're pretty good shields, Karen agreed, rated to stop most anything you're likely to run into. Most anything? Well, direct hits from Stellar-class weapons might cause some problems, but for normal combat they work fine. Stellar-class weapons? Zexthul asked faintly. Planet crackers, star killers, that kind of thing. Karen said casually. Though honestly, If someone's shooting those at you, you've probably made some poor life choices. The aliens looked like they might faint. The casual way Karen discussed weapons that could destroy planets terrified them. Do humans possess such weapons? Hive Mind Unit 7 asked. Karen looked at Jake, who nodded slightly. We've got some, sure, mostly for asteroid mining and terraforming projects. They're useful for large-scale construction work. Construction work, General Crix repeated numbly. Moving mountains, digging harbors, that sort of thing. Very efficient for big engineering projects. They continued through the ship, each new section revealing capabilities that exceeded anything in the aliens' experience. The medical bay could perform surgeries that their best hospitals couldn't attempt. The fabrication center could create materials that their scientists considered theoretical. The navigation system routinely traveled through regions of space they considered impossible to enter. Captain Morrison, Zexthul said as they completed the tour, I must ask you directly, is the heritage truly representative of standard human technology? Jake considered his answer carefully. The Heritage is an older ship, but she's well maintained and fully operational. She represents what we considered acceptable for deep space missions when she was built. Acceptable, the Nexari repeated. What would you consider exceptional? General Crix asked. Well, the new expedition-class ships are impressive. Better range, more speed, enhanced defensive systems. The science vessels have some interesting capabilities too. And military vessels? Jake's expression became neutral. We prefer to focus on peaceful exploration and trade. But you do have military ships. Every nation has the right to defend itself, Jake said calmly. The aliens understood. The implication, if this 1,000-year-old patrol vessel exceeded their most advanced warships, what were human military vessels capable of? I think, Zexthul said quietly, we need to contact our governments immediately. Our entire understanding of human capabilities requires urgent revision. You're welcome to use our communication systems if needed, Jake offered politely. Thank you, but we have our own methods. The Nexari paused. Captain, may I ask what your mission here actually involves? First contact and trade negotiations, Jake replied. We're hoping to establish peaceful relationships with all the species in this region. Peaceful relationships. That's always been our preference. We've found that cooperation works better than conflict for everyone involved. As the aliens prepared to leave, their earlier arrogance had completely disappeared. They moved carefully, speaking quietly among themselves in worried tones. The ship they had come to inspect as a primitive relic had revealed itself as something far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Thank you for the tour, Zexthul said formally. It has been most educational. Our pleasure, Jake replied. We're always happy to share information with our neighbors. After the aliens left, Ryan Clark approached Jake. Think they got the message? Oh yes, Jake said, watching the alien delegation hurry back toward their ships. I think they got the message very clearly. 2 hours after the alien delegation left, alarms began sounding throughout Kepler Station. Jake Morrison was in his quarters reviewing the day's events when Communications Officer Beth Turner's voice came over the ship's intercom. Captain 2, the bridge. We're receiving a distress call. Jake hurried to the command center where his crew was already gathering. On the main screen, he could see a Krillian transport ship drifting in space about 50,000 kilometers from the station. The vessel was clearly in trouble, with parts of its hull glowing red from internal fires. What's the situation? Jake asked. The transport hive vessel Kithara is under attack by pirates, Beth reported. 3 ships, using what looks like stolen Zephyrian military equipment. The transport's shields are failing. Jake could see the attacking ships on the display. They were sleek vessels painted in dark colors to avoid detection. Energy weapons flashed between them and the struggling transport. Any other ships responding? Negative, sir. The station's defense fleet is on, patrol in another system. The closest Galactic Council ship is 6 hours away. Jake looked at the tactical display. The transport was carrying civilian passengers, mostly Krillian families traveling to a colony world. The pirates were systematically destroying its defensive systems, preparing to board and loot the vessel. Captain, Ryan Clark said from the security station. We could reach them in 20 minutes. Jake made his decision quickly. All hands to battle stations. Beth, informed the station that we're responding to the distress call. Sir, should I contact the alien delegation? They might want to observe. Jake smiled grimly. Good idea. Tell them they're welcome to watch from the station's observation decks. The Heritage undocked from Kepler Station with smooth efficiency. Her old engines powered up without hesitation, and she began moving toward the battle at increasing speed. Jake watched the tactical displays as his crew prepared for combat. Weapons. Systems online, reported weapons specialist Karen Mitchell. All defensive systems ready. Engineering reports all green, came Patricia Wells' voice from the engine room. We're running at full power. On Kepler Station, Zexthal and his delegation rushed to the main observation deck. Other aliens gathered there too, all watching. The old human ship approached the battle. The Nexari's instruments were recording everything. Look at how it moves, General Crix whispered. No ship that old should be so responsive. The Heritage closed the distance quickly, her 1,000-year-old engines pushing her through space faster than the aliens had thought possible. As she approached the battle, the pirate ships noticed her coming. 3 vessels breaking off from the transport. Lieutenant Commander Nick Foster reported from the navigation station. They're moving to intercept us. They probably think we're an easy target, Jake said calmly. Let's show them otherwise. Defensive posture. We protect the transport first. The pirates opened fire as soon as the Heritage came within range. Their weapons were powerful, stolen from Zephyrian military ships. Energy blasts that could punch through modern armor struck the Heritage's shields, and did absolutely nothing. The ancient human ship continued toward the transport without even slowing down. Her shields absorbed the pirate weapons like they were flashlights instead of military-grade energy cannons. Their weapons aren't even scratching our shields, Karen reported. Should I return fire? Not yet. Let them waste their ammunition. On the observation deck, the aliens watched in stunned silence. The pirates were using weapons that could destroy any ship in the Galactic Council fleet, but the Heritage ignored them completely. How is this possible? Hive Mind Unit 7 buzzed frantically. Those are military-grade plasma cannons. The Heritage's shields are absorbing everything, Zexthal said, his instruments confirming what his eyes could barely believe. Their defensive systems are not even straining. The pirates seemed to realize their weapons weren't working. They changed tactics, trying to surround the Heritage and attack from multiple angles. The 3 ships spread out, firing continuously at the human vessel. They're persistent, Jake observed. Karen, disable their weapons. Non-lethal force only. Understood, sir. The Heritage's response was swift and precise. Instead of the massive energy weapons the aliens expected, she fired small, focused beams that struck each pirate ship with surgical accuracy. The beams cut through their armor like it wasn't there, destroying weapon systems while leaving life support intact. In less than 30 seconds, all 3 pirate ships were floating helplessly in space, their weapons destroyed, but their crews alive. Pirate vessels disabled, Karen reported. They're no longer a threat. Excellent shooting. Now let's help that transport. Jake turned his attention to the damaged Krillian vessel. Her hull was breached in several places, and her engines were failing. Without help, she would drift until her life support failed. Nick, take us alongside the transport, carefully now. Yes, sir. The Heritage moved with impossible grace for such an old ship. Her pilot guided her through the debris field around the transport, avoiding the wreckage with precision that amazed the watching aliens. How are they doing that? General Crix asked. Their ship is moving like it weighs nothing. Their maneuvering systems are more advanced than anything we have, Zexthal replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Once alongside the transport, the Heritage extended docking tubes and began evacuating the wounded Krillian passengers. Medical Officer Carl White coordinated the rescue, his ancient equipment easily handling injuries that would challenge the best hospitals in the galaxy. Transport Captain reports all passengers and crew evacuated, Beth announced. Their ship is beyond repair, but everyone is safe. Good work, everyone, Jake said. Beth, contact the station. Tell them we have the pirates contained and all civilians rescued. On the observation deck, the alien delegation stood in shocked silence. They had just watched a 1,000-year-old human ship defeat 3 modern warships without taking any damage, then perform a precision rescue operation that saved hundreds of lives. That was not combat, General Crick said finally. That was a demonstration. A demonstration of capabilities, Zexthul agreed. Captain Morrison wasn't trying to impress us during the tour. He was trying not to frighten us. And this ship, Hive Mind Unit 7, buzzed weakly. This ship is their idea of obsolete technology. As the Heritage returned to Kepler Station, Jake received a priority message from Earth Fleet Command. He read it quickly, then smiled. "What is it, Captain?" Ryan asked. "Fleet Command is sending the diplomatic squadron, 300 ships to establish formal relations with the Galactic Council." 300? Ryan's eyebrows rose. That should make an impression. "I think," Jake said, looking at the tactical display where the disabled pirate ships were being towed away, "we've already made an impression." Later, as the Heritage docked again at Kepler Station, Jake noticed the difference in how they were treated. The best docking berth was immediately available. Station personnel rushed to assist them. Alien crew members stepped aside respectfully as humans passed. The mockery was gone, replaced by fear and respect. Zexthul requested another meeting, this time in the station's most prestigious conference room. When Jake arrived, he found not just the original delegation, but representatives from a dozen alien species, all looking nervous and eager to please. "Captain Morrison," Zexthul began carefully, "we need to discuss the arrival of your diplomatic fleet." "Of course," Jake replied. "What would you like to know?" "Are they all like the Heritage?" Jake considered the question. "The Heritage is a patrol vessel designed for long-range missions. The diplomatic ships are somewhat different." "Different how?" "They're built for a different purpose. Diplomatic missions require different capabilities than patrol work." The aliens exchanged worried glances. They were beginning to understand that humans didn't build ships for one purpose. They built them to excel at whatever job they were designed for. "Captain," General Crick said hesitantly, "when your fleet arrives, will they be expecting any particular protocols?" "Just the standard diplomatic courtesies," Jake replied. "We're here to establish peaceful relationships, remember?" Of course, peaceful relationships." Jake looked around the room at the assembled alien representatives. A day ago they had mocked humanity's old ship and primitive technology. Now they were afraid to do anything that might offend the species that built vessels like the Heritage as routine patrol ships. "Is there anything else?" Jake asked politely. "Just one more question," Zexthul said. "The Heritage has been operating for 1,000 years. How much longer do you expect her to remain in service?" Jake smiled. "Oh, the Heritage is just getting started. She's got at least 2,000 more years in her, maybe 3,000 if we take good care of her." The silence that followed his words was complete. The aliens finally understood what they were dealing with. Humans didn't just build ships. They built mobile civilizations designed to outlast empires, to survive anything the universe could throw at them, and to keep going when everything else had long since turned to dust. And the Heritage, with all her impossible capabilities, was just an average example of what humans considered acceptable engineering. "Well," Jake said, standing up from the conference table, "if there's nothing else, I should get back to my ship. We've got a lot of preparation to do before the fleet arrives." As he left the room, Jake could hear the aliens beginning to argue among themselves about how to handle humanity's unexpected technological superiority. He smiled to himself and walked back toward his ship, his 1,000-year-old, completely ordinary, absolutely terrifying ship. The Heritage was waiting for him, ready for whatever came next. She always was.